The year is 1901, and Emil Belliner, with the help of Eldridge Johnson, has created a machine that would soon take the world by storm. The Victrola, the world's first consumer-grade music playing device. People would no longer have to leave their homes to listen to music, assuming of course they'd bought the records. Throughout the years, many different forms of personal music devices have come and gone: phonograph, record players, 8-tracks, cassette tapes, CDs, digital, all aiming to make music easier to obtain and more enjoyable to listen to. Then, in the year 1997, the same year Wannabe by the Spice Girls reached #1 on Billboard, I was born. That doesn't have anything to do with music, but music does have something to do with my life. Like many others, for the first few years of my life, music was kind of a background element, something that was always there, but not something I ever really thought about. I wasn't the type of kid whose parents made me practice an instrument from an early age, and I didn't really explore music outside of what my parents listened to. So for about the first 8 years of my life, I liked what they liked: hard rock, hip-hop, thrash metal, and R&B. But then, sometime between 2006 and 2007, I got my first computer, a hand-me-down that ran Windows 98. One day, while I was messing around with paint and trying desperately to understand how to play harps, I found out that there was some music on the computer, a whole album in fact, and that album was 1X by 3 Days Grace. I was amazed. I'd never heard anything like it before. My parents never listened to music quite like this. The guitar, the bass, the vocals, it all sounded so different. So from that point on, I listened to songs on that album daily, and this was the beginning of my journey into music. Or at least it would have been, but I didn't have any way to really find any new music outside of that particular album. We didn't have the internet at the time, and I wasn't really allowed to mess with the radio when I was with my parents, so the only other taste of new music I got were if I heard something in passing, or when my friend at school showed me a song that one time. More on that later. And then, a couple years later, we got another hand-me-down computer, this time with Windows Vista. I think someone had erased all the music on this one before we got it though, because I don't remember finding any this time around. That is, until my aunt brought over a flash drive with a bunch of music videos on it. I don't remember much of what was on it. Mostly stuff I'd already heard before, or stuff I didn't like, but one video stuck out to me. One that started with a single green line going down the screen. My Name is Mud by Primus. What an introduction to a band. And I finally had something to add to my music my parents don't listen to collection. Well, now I knew I wanted to keep listening to new music, and I was going to find a way. Luckily for me, my neighbor did have the internet at this point and showed me some more music that I knew my parents wouldn't like. Now, this music in particular, in my opinion at least, hasn't aged very well, and this will unfortunately become a running theme as my musical journey progresses. But for now, I had even more music to add to my collection, and I finally had an MP3 player of my very own, so now I could listen to music whenever I wanted, no matter how bad that music may have been. Not too long after this, my family finally made the plunge into the cyber age, and we got a dial-up internet connection. The world was suddenly at my fingertips. I could do whatever I wanted. Wait for games to load, wait for videos to load, or even wait for music to load. And that's exactly what I did. Now that I had access to all the music I wanted, I didn't know where to start. So I thought about music that I already knew. Well, I like Dragula, so why don't I listen to Living Dead Girl? I know Freak on a Leash sounds cool, so what about Got the Life? And so my private collection slowly grew once again, although I was still bottlenecked by the crappy internet connection I was stuck with. But around this time, another bit of fortune fell upon me: an unclaimed flash drive in the computer lab at school. Now, I know I shouldn't have taken it, but I did. And boy, the things I found on this one. No, not anything naughty or morally corrupting, just loud, crazy screaming music. Unlike the one my aunt had brought over, this drive was full of music I never imagined. Crazy electronic sounds, super distorted guitar, ultra-fast drum work, and the vocals. Oh man, preteen me never knew people could scream that much. There were tons of bands on that drive, and I can't remember all of them, but some I do remember were bands like Parkway Drive, We Came as Romans, Bless the Fall, I Set My Friends on Fire, and Brokencyde. Yes, unfortunately, once again, I latched onto the worst of the bunch. But as a kid just going into high school and looking to rebel, the more my dad didn't like it, the more I wanted to listen to it. And again, this would be a continuing trend for far longer than I'd like to admit. I remember one instance with particular regret, proudly playing a Sicktanick song while I cleaned up the living room. I'd fully embraced my early teen atheist phase by that point, and was actively looking for ways to disappoint not only my dad, but the rest of my extended family as well. Luckily, when we upgraded to a not dial-up but still quite slow internet connection, I became more eager to start playing games with people online, but being a kid, had no money to buy games. And that's when I discovered the two sacred words that would plunge me into the true start of my musical expansion. Internet piracy. You're telling me I can download anything I want for free and there's nothing anyone can do about it? Well, sign me up, buddy. I'm ready to don a hook and a peg leg, just give me all that free shit. So after I found out that playing gmod online with a pirated copy was a hell of a process, I kinda tapered off with the games and started tiptoeing back into music, along with movies and TV shows. Now that I could download anything, I could just get all the music from any artist, and that's what I set out to do. All the music I knew my parents liked, all the music I'd been shown by my friends. And what was that song Gunnar showed me back in 3rd grade? BYOB? Let's find out who made that and download all their music too. Enter the era where I really started expanding my musical library. Now I didn't have to rely on my friends and family, I could forge my own tastes. And this is when I discovered a lot of my favorite groups. Daft Punk, Buckethead, Contrast, Maximum the Hormone, Primus, Tenacious D, and yes, of course, System of a Down. So, even though we don't talk anymore, I want to take this time to say, thank you, Gunnar. You didn't know it at the time and probably still don't. But all those years ago, you planted a seed that would sprout into the music-crazed man I am today, and provided me my first glance at my all-time favorite band. And from there, for about a decade, it continued slowly. I listened to a song I liked, scoured the artist's discography, and tried to find other artists that had that something I couldn't get enough of. And that's where we are today. I actually made up a little list for a group chat that shows how much my music taste has changed over the last decade. I'll throw it up on screen as we finish up the history portion of this video and move on to the opinion piece portion. So, why did I make this video? Was it just to tell the story of some random kid who grew out of mirroring what his parents listened to? No. It was to say, I like music. I like all kinds of music, and I think everyone should. The problem with a lot of people, myself included, is that once we form those likes and dislikes, it's hard for us to really come out of them, with a lot of things, not just music. But I think music is one of the areas where people keep these closed-off tastes more than something like movies or TV shows, for example. If Guy A really likes country, he's probably not going to go out of his way to listen to EDM. And if Guy B absolutely loves black metal, he isn't going to go check out some random indie pop album just because. But that's the problem. You know the saying, don't judge a book by its cover? Well, I believe we shouldn't judge music by its genre. For example, if I'd never gone out of my musical comfort zone of metal, hard rock, and a little bit of EDM, I never would have discovered artists that nowadays I couldn't picture not listening to. 13-year-old me would have never listened to Six Dogs, 100 Gex, B-52s, or Boa, and they're all great. Even genres that I already liked at the time were still vast open spaces of music I hadn't explored. Back when I was listening to Metallica and 3 Days Grace, I never would have thought to listen to Meshuggah or Die So Fluid. The point is, I think everyone should listen to music they never would have before. And that doesn't mean I'm guaranteeing you that you'll find something you like the first, 10th, or even 50th time. But it doesn't matter. It's the journey that matters. Just because you don't like Nicki Minaj, that doesn't mean you won't like Queen Latifah or Girl IRL. Just because I don't like Suicide Boys doesn't mean I won't like City Morgue, but I don't know because I haven't listened to them yet. And to me, that's the fun of it. Even if I don't like a song or artist, I can use it as a jumping off point to find something that I will like. Because to me, judging all of a genre based on one artist is like judging all fantasy novels by the one you read. Maybe you didn't like The Hobbit, but have you read Six of Crows? Or maybe you're more into movies. Just because you didn't like Apollo 13 doesn't mean you won't like The Martian. No media should lose value to you based on one bad experience. That's no way to go about it. Because if you lock yourself in a box with just the things you know you like, you'll never have the chance to discover something you like even more than the stuff you already have with you. In my mind, Machine Girl and Pearly Drops are just as important as System of a Down and Primus, because they had the same impact on me when I found them that the other two did all those years ago. They showed me a side of music I wouldn't have known about before, a sound that I never would have known I liked if I hadn't taken that plunge. I remember the exact album that started me on the biggest musical expansion I've had so far in my life. I had just moved to the city. It was the beginning of 2020, right before the world got locked down, and I had moved to the worst hit county in the state. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have the luxury of a job that got shut down, so I was still going to work almost every day, working with the public, stressing about the what-ifs, and the things I liked were starting to not make me as happy as they did before. I was looking for something new constantly, but with everything being shut down, I couldn't go explore my new surroundings. So one night, I picked a random album to listen to from the new releases tab on Spotify. I didn't know the genre, the artist, or the type of music. The album cover was just a picture of a woman's face, but I knew I needed something different, so I clicked play. That album was The Archer by Alexandra Savior. From the second it started, I felt something I really hadn't since the shutdown. Excitement. The music was so different, so soft compared to what I was used to. Just melancholic piano and a woman singing mournfully about the mistakes she'd made in her life. The rest of the album had a similar sound, minor keys, sad lyrics, haunting vocals. It felt like it portrayed my mental state at the time so well. I instantly fell in love, and it was the type of music I wouldn't have given a second of my time even just a year prior, even though I'd already been trying to expand my tastes. From that point on, I decided to try my best to not let my preconceived ideas of what I like get in the way of listening to something new. And even though that attitude may not expand to the rest of my life, it's done so much for me. It's done so much for me, even in its limited scope, because I'm always listening to music. It's such an essential part of my life that at this point, I couldn't picture going back to just the old folder of pirated music from 2012. So yes, I like music. I like all music. And even if this video doesn't make you go out and explore everything like I do, I hope that it at least makes you think about what you have and what you could be missing. Thanks for watching.
I've shed love, and I'm still